What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Heart of a Lion podcast. I am your host, Jay, and you have just stepped into the Lion's Den. Now, if this is your first time tuning in, then go ahead and hit that follow or the subscribe button from wherever you're listening to the podcast, as well as to follow the page on Instagram at HoAL Podcast. Again, that's at HoAL Podcast. If you're a returning listener, then thank you for tuning in. Thank you for coming back for some more. The support, the support is always appreciated. Now, today's episode, I'm sure, for whatever reason, is probably going to make somebody mad. It's going to piss somebody off. That is not my objective, but I know how people can be. So that is probably what is going to happen. However, we're going to get into this. Now, I feel like we are so very divided as a country that we can't seem to agree on anything. And if you disagree with somebody on a particular topic, depending on what that topic is, you might just be canceled or accused for being something that you are not. Now, there are really only two topics, at least in my opinion, there are really only two topics that unite our country, and that is tragedy and sports. And the way we rally together after a tragedy or during a tragedy is really amazing. Like it's amazing to see those videos or hear about the stories of us really coming together after something bad has happened, and the way we can come together for a sports event can really be fun, can really be fun and exciting. And sometimes it's, those two are the same thing or can be brought together, I should say. The way people came back into arenas and stadiums after COVID, like the excitement that people had was something special to see. Now, as much as I say that those are two things that can really unite people and bring things together, those two things can also be two of the biggest things that cause the most division. I think about division and tragedy, and I think about 9/11 and how much of a crazy time that was, and how we did see our country come together in some ways. But we also saw the country divided because, of course, you had people who had their conspiracy theories and different things like that. But we also saw many people who were physically or verbally attacked just because they were from the Middle East or looked like they were from the Middle East. And the hate was unreal. Like it was truly sad to see or hear about how many people were attacked, or verbally, attacked just because they looked like somebody who's from the Middle East or because they were from the Middle East. Not everybody who was from the Middle East should be categorized or grouped in, with the people who did what they did. And we as Americans should understand that because many of us were, at some point have been grouped in with somebody else just because we looked a certain way or we talk a certain way. But again, that was a division that happened, and it was just truly sad and unfortunate. We talk about sports, and again, sports can be fun until you tell somebody who your favorite star is or what team you're a fan of. You tell somebody your favorite football team, and if it's the wrong one, then you'll get a bunch of hate for it. My family, as far back as I remember, my family has always been Redskins fan or not Commanders fans, so dealing with Cowboys fans has always been super annoying to me. They're like, you're a Redskins fan? How? Like all these different things that they go on these rants and these tangents for. And I remember being in Dallas a little more than 10 years ago now. But I was in Dallas and I was wearing a Redskins hat. And I remember all of the hateful looks that I got just because I was wearing a Redskins hat, which was crazy. But at the same time, I actually kind of appreciated it. Not that I wanted people looking at me hateful, but I appreciate it because you got a whole lot of people who live in DC or around DC that ain't never been to Dallas, but they are the biggest Dallas Cowboys fan. Talking about DC stands for Dallas Cowboys. It does not. But in Dallas, them fans were faithful. Like they all wore, not gonna say they all wore blue and silver. Like they wore other colors too. But for me to have a Redskins hat, like that was a no-no. Like you don't do that. but I still don't that. But at least, again, their fan base was loyal. But in basketball now in basketball, if someone asks you who the GOAT is, depending on what your answer is, you better be ready for an intense argument. Like, I literally had somebody, well, let me say this. For me, my GOAT is MJ. Like, I grew up on MJ, and for me, like, there's just nobody like him. But I literally had somebody try to argue with me online because I said Jordan is the GOAT, and they couldn't understand why I didn't believe it should be LeBron, or why I didn't believe LeBron is the best player ever. And I asked them, I said, why can't my opinion and my belief just be my opinion and my belief? You know, I said, we don't have to believe the same thing. We don't have to believe the same person is the best ever. If he's the best in my eyes and he's not the best in your eyes, like, why do we have to argue about it? And he was like, you right. You know, that's just the thing. Like, just because I have a difference of opinion doesn't mean you have to be angry about it. Doesn't mean you have to be upset about it. Doesn't mean you got to get in your feelings about it. My opinion is my opinion. My belief is my belief. And that just is what it is. Nothing I say or do should really enrage somebody that much if nothing I've said or done has caused you any physical harm, if nothing I've done has caused you any emotional harm. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And as we move on, we go to Miss Beyonce, where this woman here, if you say anything, and I do mean anything about Beyonce, this Bayhive will come for you. Now, they will defend her to the death. And even to the point of, like, the most recent Lion King live action movie, there were a lot of people who, for whatever reason, didn't like the movie. And there was a lot of criticism about just Beyonce as being the voice of Nala. And of course, the Bayhive defended her to the death and was like, no, she was amazing. She did a great job. I'm like, it's okay to not think that everything she does is great, but that's neither here nor there, you know. But when it comes to her, it doesn't matter how pleasant you are with it. They will come for you. Last year, both Jackie Hill Perry and Tiffany Montgomery talked about Beyonce, and Jackie Hill Perry was very pleasant, very, very pleasant in what she had to say. And Tiffany Montgomery came with the hellfire and brimstone. Like, she was just like, you should not be listening to Beyonce, and these are the reasons why, Whereas Jackie Hill Perry, you know, calmly spoke and talked about her conversation with God and her revelation with God, and said, this is why I no longer listen to Beyonce, but you should pray about it and have, you know, you figure that out with God yourself. Essentially is what she said. And people still came for her. Like, I saw comments like she is a white evangelical and blackface, and just all these different rude, derogatory, hateful comments towards her. I'm just like, what did she say that was so bad? But again, people will defend Beyonce to the death. It don't matter if they Christian and you Christian. If you say something about Beyonce, this woman that they've never met, this woman that probably will never have a conversation with them, this woman that will probably never shake their hand, this woman who may never ever take a picture with them, if you say anything bad about her, they will defend her to the death, and they will crucify you as a result. You know, and I personally don't understand the infatuation with her, but she's not the first artist to have infatuation with about her. Like, Michael Jackson was the same way. Prince was another one. There have been other artists. People, in the same way people feel about Beyonce, they also feel about Taylor Swift. I'm not saying it's the same group of people, but it's, you know, people also feel the same way about her. Like, they call themselves Swifties and whatnot. I'm just like, that's too much for me. But, you know, hey, do you like who you like? It is what it is. Now, this one might really get me in trouble, but we gonna talk about it anyway. The LGBTQ community. Now, I fully believe in loving everyone, regardless of who they are, what they do, what they've done, or how they identify. You know, the Bible commands us to love, and so I choose to love. But the world we live in 2024, and for the last however many years, where if you don't agree with someone or something because of how they identify or whatever, then you will get canceled. You'll get canceled. You'll get ridiculed. You'll get whatever. And it's crazy how people will act towards you. Now, many Christians have been some of the most hateful people towards this community for a long time. And because of that, I understand a lot of the uprising or the rebellion against Christians, because again, many Christians have been a poor example of what it means to be a Christian, and we haven't loved or stewarded love well towards the rest of the world, specifically the LGBT community. But even with that being said, just because I'm talking about love, just because I'm saying that the Bible commands us to love, doesn't mean that the word love means to agree. I love my daughter very much. I don't necessarily agree with everything that she does. I love my wife very much. Her and I do not agree on everything. I love my siblings very much. We do not agree on everything. But the thing is, we still love each other. There's still respect there. We don't hate each other or downplay each other just because we have a difference of opinion on something. So as a Christian, I believe the Bible and I stand on that. Now, does that mean that I hate people that don't believe in the Bible? Absolutely not. Does that mean that I hate people that believe in the Bible, but believe you can be an LGBTQ Christian? No, it does not mean that I do that. It does not mean that I hate them. I love them all. I just don't agree. Because again, I believe what the Bible says. But just because somebody doesn't agree with every decision that you make or everything you think is right, it does not mean that they hate you. Just because somebody isn't gay doesn't mean that they're homophobic. Just because somebody is a heterosexual doesn't mean that they hate you. And again, a lot of it is based on how Christians have treated people in the past. And a lot of it is based on people's previous experiences. And a lot of it is just spiritual warfare. But that's another conversation for another day. But my overall point is, just because somebody looks different than you, loves different than you, believes different from you, doesn't mean they hate you. And I say it specifically for the LGBTQ community, because we see a lot of that with this community, where if somebody thinks, believes, or does something different, then it means that they must hate me. It means that they must hate this person or that person. And that couldn't be further from the truth, or it's just not true for all people. We're supposed to be like Jesus, walk like Jesus, talk like Jesus. It doesn't mean we're perfect. It just means we're supposed to, be light bearers and image bearers of him. Now, the issue is that many of today's Christians are just modern day Sadducees and Pharisees, where they say that they're religious or they say that they're Christian, but their ideologies and what they believe and how they move and how they act is so twisted and so thwarted that they're really no earthly good. Like they're no good for anybody who believes differently from them. And because of that, we have this whole people or this whole community on the other side who thinks that all Christians hate them and all Christians are bad. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So I can be somebody who is around these people and I can love you and steward you well. But again, I don't agree. But I don't have to be. But just because I don't agree doesn't mean that I have to hate this person either. So that's just something that we keep in mind, and even with all of that, we all have the freedom of speech to say and think what we want. And it isn't regulated to only who agrees with you and whatnot. But I often say this: freedom of speech is only free as long as the hearer of your words agrees with you. Otherwise, it will cost you something. It might cost you support. It might cost you friendship. It might cost you family. It might cost you your job. Whatever. It might cost you different things. Now, moving forward, speaking of things that might cost you something, let's talk about the pandemic. The pandemic, some people might say the plandemic. I'm not here to talk about whether it was or it wasn't, whatever. But the pandemic itself was crazy. And I think that there's validity in both sides of the argument, in the sense that I think we were lied to about a lot of stuff. But I think that there was also a lot of people who died in that show, like truly showed you like the seriousness of it all. And some people have said that there were far more deaths because of the Spanish flu, which is true, but it doesn't take away from the many people who did die as a result of COVID. Like I know people who have lost loved ones as a result of COVID, so like COVID for a time, it was very serious. Now things are different, there are cures and treatments and different things like that. I do think the media has a lot to play into it, but that's neither here nor there. The main point of what I'm trying to say is the way that we treated each other during that time was truly maddening. You had people on one side who were living their best life, didn't care about anything or anyone else, calling people idiots and stupid for wearing masks and doing a lot of crazy things to show you how much they didn't believe or didn't care about the pandemic. And there were a lot of Christians who were telling people that if they got the vaccine, that they got the mark of the beast. And on the opposite side, you had people cutting off friends and family completely for not wearing masks, even more so for not being vaccinated. And I know that there were several things early on, that I would hear about, or this, that, and the third, like, oh yeah, we can hang out, but only if you're vaccinated, or we're not doing this, unless you're vaccinated, and all these crazy different things. And for me, I'm just like, first of all, I look at it like this. My medical status, whatever is going on with my body, whatever shots I get, whatever, like that is my personal medical history. Nobody else knows that or needs to know that unless I give authorization for that. When I go to the doctor, I fill out the forms and it has the release paperwork for me to allow who gets what information. So for people to just willy-nilly be asking, oh, are you vaccinated? Or for that to be a detriment, like of whether or not you have a job, to me personally, it's just crazy. But people were condemned to hell for not getting the vaccine. It made you feel like you were the worst person in the world if you didn't have it. The pressure that was placed on the country to be vaccinated was unlike anything I've ever seen as well. People were literally losing their jobs or threatened with being fired if not vaccinated. And the vaccination status was a regular part of people's conversations when it really shouldn't be. Again, that if I go get this vaccine, like that is nobody else's business. Whether I am or am not, that is nobody else's business. But we made it such a public thing and such a big spectacle. Excuse me, I take that back. The media made that such a big thing and a big spectacle that it forced many people to choose a side. And when they chose a side and how they responded, it was almost like they chose violence against the other side when it really shouldn't have been the case. Again, it goes back to this whole thing that I was just talking about with just loving the other side. If somebody is vaccinated and they choose to be vaccinated, I still love them. Like listen, I understand why you choose to get it. I love you. I love you regardless. Now, if somebody chose not to get it, I still love you. I understand why you didn't. I love you regardless. Whether you did or whether you didn't, at the end of the day, is not my business and shouldn't dictate or determine how I treat you as a person. But again, this was a huge thing that really divided our country in a time when our country really should have come together. We were actually more divided and isolated than we ever were. Which also brings me to the point of saying, like, in the same way that I feel that vaccination status like really isn't anybody else's business, I think the same thing with politics. When I go vote, there isn't a line that says vote Democrat this way, vote Republican this way. Oh, and by the way, if you just so happen to be voting third party, vote over here. No, like we're all in the same line together. And then when we go vote, we vote in private. Like it's not public on who we vote for. We take our stance, we take our side, and we go about our business. So in the same sense, like I look at like who I vote for really, to me, ain't nobody's business. I believe what I believe and I stand on what I stand on. But who I vote for on that day, like it shouldn't determine how a person treats me, or it shouldn't determine how I choose to treat somebody else. But again, like we act so as Christians, I'll say many of us act so ungodly towards the other side because we feel like, oh, you chose the wrong side, or oh, you chose this person, you chose that. When really at the end of the day, we should be like, you should never be voting for somebody just because they look like you. Like, you shouldn't. You should never vote for somebody just because they look like you. And you shouldn't vote for somebody just because you like them or just because you love them. There were many people who voted for Obama. There were many black people who voted for Obama just because he's black. There are many people who voted for Trump just because they love Trump so much. But at the end of the day, you should be voting for the person who you truly believe is going to make the country better. Now, many people voted for Obama because they thought he was going to make it better. Many people voted for Trump because they thought he was going to make it better. I'm not here to choose a side or say, who did what. I'm not mad at a person who votes, for whoever you decide to vote for, because at the end of the day, that is your right to vote for whoever you choose to vote for. We all have the right to vote. People fought long and hard for us to get that right to vote. So why should I be mad at somebody because they decided to vote for Trump, or decided to vote for Biden, or decided to vote for Obama? Or if they decide to vote for Kamala Harris, like, whoever you vote for them. That's none of my business. But how I respond and act towards you because of who you voted for, that tells everything about my character. And it's a heart issue there. We have to look inside of our heart when it comes to these different things, because if somebody, for whatever reason, votes differently than me or chooses to vote different than me, if out of my heart comes anger, if out of my heart comes malice, if out of my heart comes hatred or anxiousness, like, that's an issue with me. It ain't got nothing to do with the other person. That's an issue with me. And I've heard things that people have said, like, how can you be a Christian and vote Democrat? Or how can you be a Christian and vote for Trump? Or I'd say, how can you be a Christian and act like that? Because again, God has commanded us to love. Doesn't mean that you agree with everybody, but God has commanded us to love. So what are we really doing? What are we really talking about? What we really need to do is just process that emotion and try to figure out why is it that I'm acting like this when somebody says something that's a difference of opinion. Why am I lashing out like this? But oftentimes we aren't looking at our own selves. We're only looking at other people. We make excuses for why we act a certain way towards certain people. Oh, this person always brings it out of me. If this person brings it out of you, you really need to check on you, or don't be around that person. If people ruffle your feathers, listen, you better brush some things back down. Like, it is not, we can't be so filled with hatred that anything that somebody says takes us to a point of anger or hatred, that is just so ungodly. I see far too many people on social media who cut people off just because they voted for Trump. I see far too many people who have shown their true colors, and just shown how much they may not like certain people by voting for Trump. But that, again, it doesn't mean that just because somebody votes for Trump that they're racist or that they discriminate or that they're prejudiced. It also doesn't mean that just because somebody votes Democrat that they aren't racist or prejudiced. We are such a divided country because we often say, we take liberty in the fact that we have freedom of speech, but we also hate when people have freedom of speech. Just because somebody believes different doesn't mean that they hate you. Just because somebody believes different doesn't mean that they're the worst person in the world. Just because somebody believes different doesn't mean that you need to cancel them. If everybody I know believes the exact same thing I do, how am I supposed to learn? How am I supposed to grow? There's a lot that can be learned just by having a conversation with somebody who believes different. There's a lot that can be learned just with taking the time to be patient, to listen and try to understand where another person is coming from, or why they believe the way that they believe, or where they're coming from with certain things. There's never a need to cause physical or verbal harm to somebody just because they have a difference of opinion. Like, I should never be angry or ready to fight somebody or cuss somebody out, just because they have a difference of opinion. But maybe it's just where I am in my relationship with Christ. Maybe it's because I see things through a spiritual lens, not a physical lens. Maybe it's just where I am in maturity and just realizing, like, a lot of this stuff is just stupid. It ain't worth it. If you identify as, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, whatever, like, okay, like, God bless you. I love you. I love you still. Like, again, I believe in the Bible. I stand on that. I don't hate you. I just believe in the Bible and I stand on that. If somebody is a Cowboys fan, I do not like the Cowboys, never been a Cowboys fan, but God bless you. More power to you. I hope the Commanders beat you when they play. Again, I'm an MJ fan. If somebody else is a LeBron fan or Kobe fan, that's cool. Like, that is you have every right to root for that person or believe that that person is better than whoever. That's your right. I still take MJ. Your political views is your political views. Your vaccination status is your vaccination status. Your musical taste, that is your right. But you don't have to hate other people as a result. Love conquers all. But so many times we choose hate over love, or assume that because somebody has a difference of opinion that they chose hate, which many times couldn't be further from the truth. It's just a difference of opinion, and we have to see and understand where this person is coming from. Don't vote as we look towards the upcoming election. Don't vote for Kamala Harris as a black person just because she's black. As a person who, if you love Trump, don't vote for Trump just because you love Trump. Vote for the person who you think is best qualified. I don't want to say best qualified. Vote for the person who you think is going to make the biggest difference and push our country in the right direction. If you're doing it with a predetermined bias, then you probably shouldn't vote because you're voting for the wrong reasons. Because oftentimes, in the same way that people look at Beyonce and say Beyonce can do no wrong, many times when people vote as Democrat or as Republican, they're looking at it as the person that I'm voting for can do no wrong, or they'll never do anything wrong. The people who vote for Trump, they'll defend him to the death, and everything that is pointed out by the opposite side, they'll have a defense for why it was okay or whatever. And on the opposite end of it, when it comes to the Democratic Party, not saying that either side, doesn't do anything good, because both sides do have good, but they'll ignore everything. They'll ignore all the bad and defend the Democratic side as well. And when it comes to politics, more so than in any other arena. I mean, we see it in sports too, but I'll come back to that. But when it comes to politics, you rarely ever see it where they build up one side without tearing the other side down. Oh, this person is the best candidate because this person is trash and this person did this and this person did that, blah, 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 blah. They do it in sports too. As much as I'm an MJ fan, you'll see people who build up MJ and talk about why MJ is great while also tearing down LeBron. And they used to do it with Kobe too until Kobe passed. But they'll build up one player to talk about why one player is so great but they'll try to make their point by tearing the other player down. They do it for MJ. They do it for LeBron. They do it for Kobe. They do it for all these different players. Why can't they just all be great? Why can't I just have my favorite player who I love and just say, I see why you say he's great, but I still take MJ? Why can't we in politics just say, I see why you vote for this person, but I'm still voting for that person? Like, if you have to make a point Or if you have to make a point, but in you making a point, you're tearing down the opposite person, or if you're tearing down somebody else, I don't even want to have a conversation. Like when I'm listening to these debates and I hear people, start tearing down the other side just to prove a point or just to make a point or just to make themselves look good, I turn the TV off. I ain't got time. Like, tell me why I should vote for you without trashing the other person. Tell me why you vote for this person without tearing down the other person. Tell me why you think so-and-so is the best without tearing down the other person. Tell me why this is your favorite team without tearing down another team. Like, that's the way it should be. Tell me why you are the way you are without trashing somebody who has a difference of opinion. So these are just my thoughts. These are just my thoughts. These are just my opinions. These are just my beliefs. Again, somebody might get upset. Somebody might have a difference of opinion because of what I said or the things that I've said. And that's cool. But how you respond makes a difference. So anyway, y'all, that's it. That's all for today. God bless y'all. Until next time.